This is what we're going to do in terms of building a practice final exam. As you can see, we have a header at the top that's centered vertically with the image, an image first, then the header. And then we have two Canadian flags which are absolutely positioned. And then we have the form, subscribe to our newsletter form, and then we have a rates table. So before we start, let's just get the page flow organized. And what I'd like to do is create this. So I have put the image in, I have changed the font to red, I have vertically put it in the middle. But as you can see, I have a table here or a container or a fence for the purposes of my subscribe form. And over here, I have room for the rates table. And I plan to put the Canadian flags about here and here. Okay, I'm going to begin by starting up a new file called banking.html. So the first thing is to put the usual tags in, and you'll notice that I've added a container, which I'm going to put a temporary container in, border it red so that we can see the outline of the page. So here's how I'm planning to style the container. I've got a width of 80% of the body, a height of 1,000 pixels, a red fence, which I'll take out later, and a margin on the left side of 10%. And because of the 80%, we'll have a margin on the right side of 10%. So this is what it looks like. At full screen, it looks like this. So I'm going to put most of my content in the red frame here. I've also managed to put the product shot kind of in the middle so that I can constantly refer back to it. And then I can click also to get the Chrome to come up as well. So if you organize your windows in this kind of arrangement, it's going to make for making the code in the HTML and the CSS a lot faster. Next, I've added two more zones or fences, one for the subscribe form, which will be a little wider, and one for the rates table. So in the HTML or body section, this is how I set up the two zones. With the subscribe form, I'm going to go 65% of the area of the red frame and 800 pixels high, and I'll make it purple, and I'm going to float it left because we're going to have another form right beside it. So this is what it'll look like, and if I go full screen, and your exam will always be marked at full screen, this is what it looks like. Now the zone will move down once I put the header in, so I'm quite happy with the purple zone or the subscribe area. Next, I put in the rates table. It's going to be a little thinner at 25%, 800 pixels high. I'll make it green and float it left as well, and put a 5% margin in between the two zones. So at full screen, it looks like this. And that doesn't look too far off what I need to get. So I'm pretty happy with this. Next, let's put the header, and let's make it an H1. And also, we'll put in the text and the image in the same container, the H1 container. As you can see, I'm planning to style it with heading pick, but at the moment I haven't defined that. So let's just see what we get so far without defining it. And whoops, everything gets thrown for a loop because of the big size of the image. So what I'm going to do is center that image and make the image a bit smaller, change the rate checker font to red, or the color I should say to red, and kind of vertically align it. So I've just added this style in for the H1. I'm centering it and I'm coloring the font red. Then for the heading pick, I'm picking 200 pixels width by 150, and I'm vertically aligning the text in the middle. And just for now, I'll put a little border around the image so you can see this container. And if we render this, this is what it looks like. And as you can see, it looks pretty fine. It's very close to the model, and I can take out the orange frame anytime. So this ends the page flow or step one requirement of the setup for making the final product. Okay, we're going to begin by creating this form. So as you can see, the field set subscribe to our newsletter is red with the lettering red, which would be the legend. And then you've got 3 field sets that are black inside. So we'll start off by putting in a field set. We'll call this form container. And because the different field sets have different properties, i.e. the color and stuff, we're going to have to associate a class with each field set. Also, too, the legend will have to have a class because other legends like select delivery option are black. So we're going to have to say class red color and make that class as well in order to get the coloring properly. So I've set this, and up here in the style, I've added these 2 lines here. Now this is the technique for when you have a legend and then inside you have a class within that legend. Similarly, when you have a field set and inside you have a class that's going to pertain just to that field set. So this is going to make the text red, and this is going to make the border red. So if we take a look at this, it looks like this. And that's what I expect to get. Okay, the next thing I observe is 3 black field sets. 1, 2, 3. So I'm going to put those in right now. It's going to look like this. Each of them will be black with a black border. And in order to do that, I'll start right here, and I'll give each one of them a class in case I have to do further touch-ups, and as well a legend. And then in terms of styling, I'm going to have each of my field sets are going to be black, the border, and the lettering is going to also be black. So I'm just going to state that pretty clearly. So I've put in the 3 radio buttons with the right text. And each of the radio group, the name is the same. So delivery option, del option, del option. That puts them all in the same group. And I'm using the label, and the 4 has to match the ID of the previous input type equals radio in order to get the effect that you click on the email, fax, or regular mail, and the radio button will get selected. So let's just have a look and see what that looks like. And watch me click on fax, and then the fax is selected or the regular is selected. And you can see checked equals checked. That's why the radio button starts selected with respect to the email. Next, we're going to put in the email address, a placeholder, the first name a placeholder, then we're going to have the last name a placeholder, and we'll put in the street address. Now, it's important to make sure that you have kind of BRs in place in order to break lines as needed. So here's the 4 different questions being asked. You'll notice that I have a BR to advance the line feed, 1 here and 1 here, and then 1 here and 1 here, and so on. You'll also notice that the first 3 I've placeholder, 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 but I'm using value for the fennel address because that's an address that we think is going to be a default that people should use. So take a look at how this renders. So I've got the email address. If we just blow this up a little bit, I've got the first name, the last name, all placeholder, light in the background, but this is more dark because it's an actual value, and we think that everybody's going to use that address, which is why we do that like that. So I'm now adding the phone number and the comments text area box. So for the phone number, nothing special, another BR here. And for the phone number itself, remember this is the number of characters that are shown on the user interface, whereas this is the maximum number of characters that are allowed. And we're giving a value again to, this is the phone number that we expect that most people will put in. So we're not using it as a placeholder, putting it as a value, but of course the user interface person can change it. With respect to comments, we have comments, and this is a text area box. It's got 3 rows, 60 spaces, and we start off with some text inside the box. So I've added BR, which I needed after street address, and this is pretty much what it looks like so far. We're putting in the select box right now, and you can notice from the model that the prompt is on one line and there's a BR, and then you have the select box on the second line. And the Royal Canadian Bank is the default. This is the code for it right here. And there's my BR to advance the line feed. And here are the various values. Now the values are what are going to be sent to the other computer when you do the post. And these strings here are what the user interface is going to see. So if we render this, here's what it looks like. And here you have the other two options. Lastly, I'm going to put in my checkbox group. Notice that each of the checkboxes has a different name. So we're going to go mortgage, interest, and retire. And each of the checkboxes is going to start off with the default checked. So it will be checked when we start up. We're also using the label, and we're using the for and the ID so that we have this ability. We want to, if this wasn't checked, we want to be able to click on just the newsletter verbiage here and then have it checked. We just noticed that the checkboxes are aligned vertically, so I'm going to put some BRs in to achieve that, because this is what I have right at the moment. So I've just put a BR in after each one of these, which will cause them to be vertically aligned. So if we have a look at this, they're vertically aligned. Some of you may be wondering why I didn't put this into a checkbox group by having the name always the same, like mortgage, mortgage, mortgage. And the reason for that is I want, when this is sent to the other computer, the CS Unix computer, I want separate variables, and I want them either not sent or checked. And so I'm going to check it with 3 separate variables as opposed to one variable that has that comma delimiting all the ones that were checked. Next, I'm going to put in the form tag right here, and I'm just going to put it inside the subscribe form container. And as you can see, I've got an ID for it. In fact, I'll change that to a name for the form. And then I have the method post. And this is the other computer that the form data will be sent to. Now, just before this div closes, the subscribe form, I'm going to make sure I have a close for the form. And that's why it's a good idea to put this comment in. So in addition to closing the form, I'm going to need my 2 buttons. One button is called subscribe, and the other button is called clear form, with just a tiny little bit of space between them. So this is the way I'm going to set up my buttons. I'm going to say submit for the button type. I'm going to have a name for the button. I'm going to have a style, and the 2 buttons are going to have the same style. Because I might have to change aspects of the style. And this is what I want the user interface or the person viewing the form to see at what the button's called. These are just some spaces. I notice there's not many spaces, so I'll just put 2 spaces there. And if I save that and we have a look at this, here's what our buttons look like here at the bottom. And to see if they work, I can go clear form and things clear. I'll put a little data in there just to, there's the clearing. Things go back to the default. And if I press the submit button, as you can see, it's submitted successfully to the CS Unix Echo server. Now in this case, the buttons look exactly like the default buttons you get with HTML, so the button style is not going to come into play this time. I just noticed something. My red container has gone kaflooey, and I've lost my margin on the left. So I'm just going to have a little look back to see what went wrong. And right off the bat, I see this body tag got corrupted a little bit. So I'll just put this body tag back to the way it was, save things, and hope that fixes everything. And yes, it does. So I'll be taking my fences out pretty soon. I could take the red one out, and I could take the purple one out now. So let's do that. I'll do that. So the red fence is right here. I'll take that out. The purple fence is right here. I'll take that out, and we'll just have a look at what we have so far. And that looks pretty good. The first thing we should do when we're looking at this table is size it up, count the number of rows and columns. The rates are checked daily. That's actually a caption that's styled as a red kind of row. If you count it as a row in the table, that would work too, but I'm going to use it as a caption. So the number of columns are 1, 2, 3, and the number of rows are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So we have a 9 by 3 matrix. So the first thing I'm going to do in the area prescribed for the rates table is put in my letters. The div to do with the rates table, I've added a table here, and I've put in all these 9 rows, and each row has 3 columns. Here's the end of the rates table right here. Arranged my windows like this so that I've got I can easily see it as I start populating the table. So the first thing I'll do is do this row at the very top. And I notice that they're bold, but not centered, but the TH gives me bold and centering. So I'll take the TH anyway and then overwrite the centering. So I'm going to change these all to THs from TDs. So they're all THs, and I'll put in a rule right now before I forget to left justify the THs. So there's my rule. So next I'm going to populate the text for the first row. Here's the first row, and this is what it looks like rendered. I'm going to concentrate on getting all the text in first, and then I'll worry about the styling. So I'm going to do the top left corner, which is B1, and if I take a look at the model, I notice that's First National Bank, but it's spanned over 3 rows. So that's how I put it in, and once we look at that, we have 2 riffraff here, C3 and D3, so I'll get rid of those. C3 is gone, and D3 is gone. Next I'm going to do E1, which is the top left corner, and if I have a look at that on the model, that's called Royal Canadian Bank. And this is how I put it in. It spans over 3 rows, and rendered it comes out like this. So F3 and G3 are gone. And updating things, the table looks like this. Next is H1, and if I have a look at the model, H1 is this big paragraph. So I'm going to put that in next, H1. Got the text in there, and I realized that it spans 3 columns. So col span will equal 3. Now I'm also going to put in a class here because I just know that I'm going to have to change the size of the font and put it in the middle. I won't do that right this second, but I know I'm going to need a class for this. And clearly you can see that H2 and H3 need to be taken out. Next I'm going to do I1 here. And if we take a look at the model, that's the Wikipedia mortgage information. It spans over 3 columns as well. I'm putting it in like this, and I also see that it's a hyperlink, so I'll put in a hyperlink to the current page right at the moment. And when I do that, there's my hyperlink to the current page. I have to take out these 2 riffraffs of I2 and I3. So now we've successfully got a lot of the text in. Next we have to put in the years, and we start with B2. So we put in B2 first, which I've done right there. And next we put in C1, so this is 2 years. And next is D1, which is 3 years. And then we repeat the same, so this is 1 year. The F1 is 2 years. And the G1 is 3 years. So let's have a look at that. Okay, and if I just give this a bit more width, that looks pretty good. Next, we're putting in interest rates, and the rates are shown here. 3.5%, we have 3.9%, 4.5%, and then the next one is 3.6%, 4%. And last but not least is 4.3%. So let's save that. Let's have a look and see what it looks like. And we've got all the text in. Now it's time to style things. The only text I don't have in is that caption up at the top. So if we take a look at that caption, I can go up to the top of the table, put it in, and just say, rates are checked daily. And if we have a look at that, it's not going to look too good, but at least the text will be in there. Next step is we'll just take each row and systematically do the style for it. So let's start with that caption first. It's got to look like this. Here's my first attempt at the caption. It's got to have a background color of red. The letters have to be white. There has to be a height. It looks kind of like 40 pixels, and it's got a bigger font. So when I have a look at the model and look at mine, it's similar. The font on mine's not quite the same. This is Arial font on the model, so we'll go up and put an Arial font in. I'm putting in Arial first, and we'll have a look at that after I save. And it looks pretty good. It's just a little bit wide, not quite the same as the, I need to make my table just a little bit wider. So I'll make the green container a little bit wider. So things are a little bit better. To make the green container a little bit wider, what I did was I changed, this was 65, I changed that to 55, and this was 25, and I changed this to 30. Next, I've got to deal with this second row, and as you can see, there's a background color of light gray, and we can also see the frame is white. So let's give that a try. I recall the first row of my table, which is right under the caption. This was what I had, so I'll just add these lines in. So I'm going to make a 2 pixel solid white border, light gray background, a height of 60, and up the font a little bit. See what we get. And that looks pretty good. So I'm going to go on to the next row. And the next row, we need to have a red font color here, and we need a red font color here. So I'm going to make a class called red text. So here's my class. Also too, I noticed the characters a little bit bigger and they seem to be bold, those red characters. So I'm going to go down to the table, and here was one of them. I'm going to put in class equals red text, and the other one will go right here. On doing that, I get the red text. My column 1 is a little bit wider, so I'm going to make it a little bit smaller, and everything should kind of fall in line, I think. I've made my column a little bit narrower, and I did that actually in the class by adding width 25%. I could have gone with a call group and done it that way, but I I decided to do it this way, and I'm pretty close. Now, I've got some grid lines to worry about, and I'll deal with that next. What I've done to get these grid lines is I've gone to my board or my table and taken out my border collapse, saved that, and this is how it renders. So it's pretty close to what's there already. Also notice my white border in row 1 was 2 pixels. I'm thinking of changing that maybe to just 1 pixel. So I'll do that. And to change it to 1 pixel, I'm just going to change this to 1, save it, have a quick look. And that looks probably a little bit better, a little closer to the model. Okay, the next step is to make the height of this, the rates, a lot bigger. I recall when I put that rates cell together, I already put a class in there called rates cell. So I'm going to make it 200 high and just make the font a little bit bigger. And if I take a look at that, it's not far off from the model. So next we're going to do the hyperlink at the bottom. So I think I have to make this cell a little more height, and I have to put it in the middle. In order to do that, I'm going to just lay out things like this a little cleaner. And I'm going to put a class right in here, or a div, and with an ID, and I'm just going to call it wiki cell, and I'll close that div. And now I can center things and make the wiki cell a little deeper. So here's what I get. I actually put padding top because it was too close to the top without the padding. And so the wiki cell kind of looks okay. It's very close to what we need. I might be a little too much height there, which is easy to lower this to 30 and see how it looks. Just maybe even lower it even a bit more. So I'll go 20. But if I go 20, I may have to change this to 5. Okay, it looks like a little padding at the bottom wouldn't hurt as well, because this, now I'm going to leave it, it's fine. The last thing I'm going to worry about is this red frame around the entire rates table. And I notice I've got a green frame from my page flow at the very beginning. So if I change the height of the green frame and make it red, that should do it. So I played around with these numbers. This is what was green. I changed that to red. And this was 800, and I changed it to 530 after playing around. So I'm pretty happy with that. And if I take a look at the final product, this is pretty much it. The only other thing I need to do is put in these Canadian flags, absolute positioning them. So I'll do that next. Okay, so we'll take a look at the images directory, and we see the flag is called flag.png. So in order to absolutely position them, first of all, I'll set up an ID called flag1 and get my flag in the middle of that. And let's have a look at what that would be without the styling. And the flag shows up in the top left corner. So now let's put the styling in for the flag1 ID. So in order to get the flag to show up like this, what I did was I put this style together. Position absolute, left, 0 pixels from the left side, and 300 pixels down. So if we take a look at the model on the left, the 300 is a little bit too much. So if I subtract off some, mind you, the 300 is a little, for the second flag, it's a little bit too little. So that gives me an idea of how to put the two flags positioned correctly. Playing around, I found out 220 was about right for the first flag. So I put in 220 right here. And I chose 320 for the second flag, which is approximately right. So if I have a look at that, I just actually made another div exactly a copy of the one above it. The only difference is the flag 2, and then a positioning for the flag 2. And if we take a look at this at full screen, this is kind of the final product. There is a little bit of maybe 20 pixel space here on the left, and maybe I'll just do that and be done. So I've added actually 10 pixels, and I think we're completely done. Put the 10 pixels right in there. Okay, that completes the job at hand. Good luck on your